in this episode.
And it's funny because a lot of the guys were giving me crap about having a ringworm on my head.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're so nasty. And then I was like, guys, it's cancer. And they're like, man, we feel terrible.
In an obtuse world, Mark and Jefe will combine military, law enforcement, and general FUD knowledge to keep you vertical. Welcome to the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Live, Laugh, LARP podcast. We sure do appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day, regardless of what you're doing, where you're at, to listen to us talk into a can. We've got our co-host Jefe. What's going on, man?
Since the last episode, it's been Puerto Rico, got sunburnt to all hell. And that's not sunburnt. And then I got poison ivy all over my body. So it's like by the time one layer of skin recovered, the second layer just got molted away again. And I have the perfect dad advice that I just thought of right now for this.
Oh, I forget all about that.
Yeah. I need to save that one for later. But yes, doing
good. I'm glad that you're here. It's been a minute since we've done this. We're kind of not throwing this together. I always do that, but we're not throwing this together at the last minute, but we kind of are.
Someone bailed on us, so now we have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, that's all right. There was an emergency, so we totally understand, and hopefully we'll have that guest on here very, very shortly. So we're going to have a whole bunch of noise in the background. We got some drills going on, hanging stuff up, and then we've got Roxy Girl is sitting over here. How you doing? You doing okay? You doing all right? Roxy Girls, you guys have heard Roxy run around in the background in some of the past episodes, and unfortunately, she's been having a rough go of it. The last couple of weeks, she's had a few seizures, so we've got her downstairs with me, and she's just checking things out. With that being said, we need to say a quick thank you to the title sponsor of our podcast. That is XS Sites. We do appreciate all of their support on the podcast. If you guys are interested in checking them out, we do have a discount code. It is in the description of this, but it's real simple. Just use the code LARP, L-A-R-P, and you'll get 20% off anything you order from XS Sites. They got some great stuff for your pistols, for your lever guns, for your AKs, your ARs. They've got a whole bunch of different stuff, so definitely go check them out. Again, all of that stuff is in the details of this podcast. So,
Big green dot, good.
Big green dot is
big
good.
green dot, good.
Yep.
That's if I have to say anything about XS Sites. Big green dot, good.
I can tell you that Curtis from the VSO channel, VSO gun channel, he was really turned on by them by the late great James Yeager with his Force on Force class, a low light Force on Force class, and he said that that big dot really helped him. How they say, punch out and go to work.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those. With everyone going to red dots these days, like the closest thing you could have got to a red dot before that on a handgun was those XS big dots, or maybe some like the big fiber optics. Yeah, but it's still nice to have that option. Like if you don't want to carry an optic on your gun, or if you're like my J-frame friends and I that can't get an optic on our gun, now you can get that stupid thing that Atero didn't make. But it's the next best closest thing to having a red dot on your gun, and I would argue it's probably as good as someone who's now devolving back into iron sights on everything.
Yeah.
But yes, XS.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right, there we go. So let's jump into this episode.
So we have as Mark was talking about earlier, we don't like saying hobbled together, but somebody I've wanted to bring on a long time to have their story kind of memorialized, because it's a cool story. One, it's a story of hope and service and sacrifice that is just something that I think everyone needs to hear, just to kind of to get that extra little motivation in their life, saying, hey, this is something that's important. Yeah. Your health is important. Yep. Eating correctly is important. Yes, as
I know. Well, it's not even that. I just down like 4 of those little Heath mini bars. Yeah. I needed a sugar dump before we got going.
So we like to thank my friend Josh. Josh, how you doing this morning or
Hi.
evening? Whatever. It's 8:00 at night. Jeez. morning's irrelevant. Irrelevant.
I say
a
morning
relative
all
term.
the time.
Morning. So, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, currently I volunteer
Mm-hmm.
at a nonprofit, and I'm throwing my hat in the ring for veteran advocacy, which is odd because it's not something that I ever thought that I would really do.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to this, I was tooling around in the mountains. I worked as an assistant guide for the Warriors Keep. It's a nonprofit where we take veterans from the bottom of a mountain all the way to the top and kind of just let nature do its thing, and just allow that healing to happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really, a lot of kumbaya talking about our feelings. It was just kind of neat and amazing to see how when you get veterans out into nature and just allow them to commune, kind of like I know all of us here have served, kind of how we did when we were in the military. So did that I was involved with the organization for about 3 years, but active in facilitating things for about a year. And then throughout that process, also full-time job of fighting cancer. I was diagnosed with infiltrative basal cell carcinoma of the head and neck. It was stage 4 in 2019.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
And before that, just I had a computer science degree, worked with software development, and then that was my only real job outside of being in the military. And I served for about 7 years.
So like a jack of all trades, but
Jack of all trades.
so let's just dig in a little bit right off the bat. So you served. How long did you serve, and what'd you do?
Altogether about 10 years, 7 years active duty, 3 years as a reservist, and my last real job, as I say it, I was a weapons squad leader for a light infantry platoon.
Okay.
So I was in charge of emplacing the big guns. It was a lot of fun. Worked with a lot of really cool people. Got to go to a lot of really cool schools, and got to spend roughly about 2 years in Iraq.
Okay. And then transitioned out. You did reserve for a little bit, and then you go into the civilian workforce. I don't want to open that can of worms because I think everybody here at this who's either listening or sitting down here knows that the military does a really not too great of a job doing the transition, like the soldiers for life or whatever they try to do nowadays. It's a little bit better, but what did you end up doing after you got out of active and into reserves on the civilian side?
Yeah, I was a bit like a Plinko chip while I was trying to figure that out for the first year. Kind of fell into the family business for a little bit. That didn't necessarily work out.
You have to do the family business.
The family business.
The family
yes,
business, yes.
No, but ultimately settled on going back to school, and that's why I was going. That's why I went into the reserves. So I actually honorably discharged from my active duty service, and then I re-enlisted within the same year of this
I know,
right? I know, I didn't learn anything. Into the reserves, and once I got into the reserves, it was basically just for childcare because at that time we'd had our first child.
Okay.
So I decided when I was going back to school, what do you go to school for? In the military, it's very much, your path, right? It's your lanes, your career progression, where you can go one way or the other, and then you get into a college environment. It's like you can be anything you want to be. But that was too hard for me, so I just kind of Googled most jobs, biggest job market, paid the most, and settled on a computer science degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you do any computer sciencey stuff or with it, or you just kind of put that on the wayside?
No, yeah, I don't. I did when I was working, and I've spoken to some people that I've worked with since I've started to feel better, just to see if that's something that I would want to get into, and it's just not for me. I always joked while I was going into that field, computer science, that I traded in my M4 for a keyboard.
Oh, so you went that or an officer. Either you went officer route or to the civilian market, and then so you're in the civilian market now, or you went to school, kind of got out in the reserves. When were you diagnosed with the cancer?
Yep. So my cancer diagnosis came in, I believe, September of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was kind of crazy in and of itself, the diagnosis, because I had hit my head. I had some head trauma July 4th of that year. And then I was going to my chiropractor, and he was treating me to try to get better. You know, I had this big, like, swollen thing.
How'd you
trauma.
hurt your head? Sorry, how'd you hurt your head?
Yeah, I was going to just skip right past
Okay.
it.
Okay. Well, if you want to skip right past, we can skip right past.
Well, it's July 4th weekend. And so I was dumb, drunk, and doing backflips on a trampoline and decided to go for the double.
Oh, yeah.
Which-
You never go for the double.
Never go for the double.
Never go for the double.
And so I got the first rotation, and on the second rotation, I didn't go all the way. And when I came down and hit, my head smacked the bar.
Oh, yeah. That will do.
So it was, I had some force going. And I remember the impact because I was like, I shot my hands forward uncontrollably, and it was just like, bing, kind of blacked out a little bit.
So it's like seeing something from like UFC, you know, when someone gets
Yeah,
their bell
exactly.
rung. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think there's a reason that it's illegal to punch in the back of the head.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But that, looking back on it, my wife and I believe was the initial inflammation that helped make this perfect storm, this environment for this perfect storm of my cancer to take off.
Okay.
So yeah, you know, hit my head, thought that the symptoms that I was experiencing, I thought those were, they called it post-concussion syndrome or long-term concussion syndrome or something like that, where basically you continue to have headaches. And so working in the field that I was with computer science, I couldn't stare at a screen. Obviously, you know, I tried to make it work for as long as I could, but it just wasn't happening. But anyways, to the diagnosis, I went to the doctor who had treated my previous cancer. I had a operable squamous cell carcinoma in my neck that got removed in like 2015 while I was going to college.
What exactly is that?
It's just
In layman terms, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah, and it was just a solid tumor. It's so you have three different types of skin cancers. You have a melanoma, which is, you know, considered to be malignant, harder to treat. And then your easier ones to treat, what you most commonly see on the surface of the skin, are squamous cells and basal cells.
Okay.
And so I've had the squamous cell and the basal cell. What was interesting about my squamous cell, though, and they pointed it out at the time, was that it started below the skin. So, yeah, just a detail. But yeah, he had been my surgeon who removed that one, and so, you know, we were trying to figure it out with him, and it was interesting because at the time he was really busy, and I noticed, like, every time I went in there, you know, it was only like a 15-minute appointment.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel for the doctors, just how they have to try to get so much done, like properly evaluate you and then do their thing that they need to do. You know, it's just I don't know how it is now, but at that time, I don't really see how, you know, you can go through that and treat properly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, you know, we kind of did a couple of those back and forth appointments. My chiropractor was the one who actually kept insisting that I go back and push back on my doctors to get this thing checked out.
Is that Mitch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, he's been a huge help to my family over the years in more ways than one, you know,
Yep.
even kind of emotional support. But yeah, you know, we got it diagnosed eventually. Before that had happened, though, it started to turn into a tumor, and it was like purpley bump behind my ear. And so the doctor saw that and thought that maybe it was a keloid scar from the past surgery.
Yeah.
So he injected it with a steroid, because that's what you do when you get a keloid scars, which doesn't make sense for my skin tone anyways. Usually people with a lot of melanin, they'll get this like scar that
For
builds
those who
up
can't
on
see,
itself.
Josh's like
melanin
Aryan,
deficient.
perfect Aryan man, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I had a buddy he rolled through that we served in Baghdad together. And
Yeah.
he's very Irish.
Okay.
Red hair. And right before we took the picture to send to the group chat with all the guys we went to Baghdad with, he said, I'm going to tell him it's the least amount of melanin in the platoon. Yeah, so anyways, they treated the keloid scar, and my wife noticed that it was weird because the injection points started to get bigger. Like they weren't healing, they were spreading. So at that point, we got the PET scan, and then I finally got my diagnosis in late 2019.
Okay.
And the layman term for that diagnosis, I mean, explain that a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, the best way that I can describe it is instead of like having a tumor that grows, like a soft tissue tumor that grows and gets bigger and pushes on organs and is deadly in that way, I had a tumor that was basically destroying all of my cells.
Okay.
So it was eating away. I mean, I describe it as like something chewing my head off.
Yeah.
And it'd be pretty nasty because, my skin would just slough off. And my wife would be cleaning it, like wiping my skin away and,
Wow.
and bleeding all over the place.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
probably dealt with that for a couple of years.
And at its peak, how big of an area are we talking?
Yeah. Man, I have a picture I could show you. I would say before we did treatment, the biggest that it got was like right here.
So about grapefruit size or a little bigger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good tomato.
Tomato. Yeah,
Good
good size
tomato
tomato.
Yeah. But since it wasn't a solid tumor and didn't like ball up, I would
Sure.
describe it as like a saucer,
Yeah.
right? But it's on the back of your head at the base of your skull. And for me, right behind my right ear. So between your cervical spine, where it starts, and my ear, which the problem with that is it's inoperable. And so that's why it kind of went from, I didn't know I have cancer to you have cancer. Oh, by the way, if we don't treat this thing, you'll be dead in 4 months, like that
Wow.
type of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then, and I guess the like when you were just talking about most cancer or most tumors, it's like pressing on things or, causing damage that way. This was just literally just eating your body away from you.
Yeah.
Was that service related sort of cancer come from service, or was that just something that's genetic? Like where did this come from?
Yeah. So that's kind of a loaded question.
Yeah. Do they know where it came from?
Right.
Maybe that's a better question to ask.
Well, so the reason I say that that's a loaded question is because, yes, they have some ideas based off of lots of research on how these things come to be. But there's so many things that go into the human body, right? I mean, even if you think of like a nutrition study, right? And this is kind of like my qualm with nutrition science, not to get completely off topic.
It's on topic. We'll get there. Don't worry.
If you think of like a blueberry, right? So you're trying to understand how a blueberry interacts with the human body, right? Well, that blueberry is going to be made up of a lot of different molecules, right? A lot of different nutrients. And so you try to pick out a few of these nutrients and figure out like which of these nutrients are actually having the benefit in the human body. Fine, okay.
Yeah.
But then the other side of it is, so now you've eaten this blueberry. Well, how are you supposed to have a control for the makeup of the person that's eating this blueberry?
That's right. Yeah.
Because, primarily, I think we understand that we're made up of a lot of bugs, right? A lot of bacteria.
Yeah.
Your gut flora, just the lining in your stomach, it's going to be completely different, right? So, I mean, if you think of like the college student, right, who's going around eating all of the low budget foods and
the ramen.
Right, the ramen.
No, let's leave ramen alone. Okay, man. Let's not do that to ramen.
That's the biggest thing. Side note: if they're testing the nutrients of the ramen, I'm wondering if they're actually pulling all of the little mites and everything that's crawling all over.
Yeah, that's where the protein comes from.
Anyway, okay.
So, sorry.
Back to blueberries.
Yeah.
So it's back to the blueberries. So I say all that just like, how can we understand these things? It's important information to try to tease out. Sure, I understand it. But if we're thinking about my cancer, right, like service connected, they did deem it as being service connected.
Okay, good.
My first skin cancer that I had was actually when I was in Baghdad. They thought that it was ringworm at first, and I remember my our medic was giving me Lamisil to rub on this cancer, and we are just like, why isn't it going away? And it's funny because a lot of the guys were giving me crap about having a ringworm on my head. Like, oh, you're so nasty. And then I was like, guys, it's cancer. And they're like, man, we feel terrible.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So this is like mid 2019. You get the bad news.
Yeah.
Essentially, like the thing that really puts a damper on a lot of things. And at this time, I mean, you're married with kids. And I know the backstory, so I'm trying to like lead it into this. So what did you guys do about that with that news? What was the kind of the plan?
Well,
before we get into the plan, what was the doctor's plan? What did they want to do?
Yeah, I guess what did they want to do?
So the doctor, at that point, we had decided that this was too big of an issue to, just kind of with the local ENT. We wanted to go somewhere where we were going to get that collaborative care.
Yeah.
We asked for a second opinion. We went to KU, and we met with the dermatologist there, and also with a radiation oncologist. And so the plan was to go with vismodegib, which was a tabular chemotherapy. And then we were going to do, I want to say 36 rounds of a high dose radiation. Like they were just going to try to blast it away.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
and that ends up being pretty risky with where it is. I mean, base of your spine, near your brain.
Yeah.
And then your spinal cord as well. That I would imagine that the radiation would have some adverse effects,
Yeah. And I've actually had not that, but some radiation treatment since then. And even with the level of radiation that I got, it was pretty significant. And they had to monitor me very closely to make sure that none of these things would get haywire and cause other issues.
Yeah.
So and the reason why I bring that up is because my father's dealt with cancer.
Okay.
And he had a very rare skin cancer that embedded into the bridge of his nose. They went in, they cut out part of his nose, and then did some rhinoplasty to kind of put him back together. But he never went into remission. It came back. So they eventually had to amputate his nose and then go through chemo as well. And they had to pinpoint the chemotherapy so that it wouldn't be too close to his brain. Because it's, they're shooting right here, and your brain. So they were very concerned. They first wanted to do they first did immunotherapy. Right?
Yeah.
They tried that. That lasted about a year. And then because of kind of that not taking care of certain things that they thought it would, and then my dad just constantly talking to his doctor saying, things are just not right. Something's not right here. I just don't feel like something is working correctly in my nose. So they went back in and did a biopsy and found that that cancer had come back. So they're like, at this point, we've done the immunotherapy. We've done the surgery before. The only other thing that we can do is cut it out.
Yeah.
And in order for us to cut it out, we're going to have to take your entire nose off, right? So the thing that the thing that I kind of say jokingly is that my dad's now like Skeletor. He's
Right.
Or what's the bad guy from Fallout, the TV series?
Yeah, the Ghoul.
The Ghoul.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but
budget version of it.
yeah, it looks just like him. Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
So I say all of that because I'm familiar with
Okay.
trying to treat something like that so close to your important things,
Right. Yeah, no, and it was, and that was a big consideration. There was another aspect of, why we ultimately decided not to do treatment right away. It was that we just got done watching my father-in-law pass away from a blood cancer. He had myelodysplasia, I believe. And there at the, we tried with him, with the natural route, went to this clinic in Arizona called Euromed, which has had great success. I even know some people here locally who went down there and they've had a lot of good success with different types of blood cancers using the treatments that they do, which are kind of a blend of conventional and integrative, and even like lower doses of chemotherapy. And so at the end of that wasn't working. And so our last ditch effort is kind of a reverse, because usually what I've seen is people kind of go into it, they do the natural route first, and then, they do all the conventional things first. And once the doctors that are treating them get to the end of it, they've exhausted all the options that they can do legally, through the FDA. They say, I'm sorry, there's just nothing that we can do for you.
Yeah.
You need to go home. And so they'll go to these more integrated facilities. My father-in-law kind of did it in reverse. So he ended up going to get chemotherapy done at, I think it's City of Hope, maybe, in like California. So we watched him basically. I don't know if you've ever seen someone who's went through cancer and done chemotherapy, and
Oh yeah.
they get cachexic, and they basically look like a concentration camp victim.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so, we just got done watching that. My wife is distraught, and now all of a sudden her husband has cancer, and we have 3 kids. And so, there was a little bit of fear wrapped up in that, a little bit of mistrust. We just didn't trust the medical establishment at the time. And my father-in-law died at KU to compound the fear in our decision-making process. And COVID was going on. And when I actually got my diagnosis at KU, they wouldn't even let my wife in the waiting room.
Yeah.
So I was sitting in there by myself with doctors masked up, and probably like the least amount of empathy I think you ever could receive.
Of course.
Yep.
So we ran. I believe, my wife might say differently, but we ran like head first into the natural route. Picked up Chris Beat Cancers, Chris Wark, his book Chris Beat Cancer, and started juicing like crazy. Just reading a lot of books. Countless hours in my office in my old house just on PubMed, trying to use my non-medical brain and read abstracts and understand, okay, what do I need to do? What are these doctors missing? Like, how can I figure this out? Just complete desperation.
Yeah. Now, when you say juicing, we're not talking.
We're not talking about like taking
we're not
roids, right? I mean, you're looking pretty stacked right now, but
you got to stay big while you're going through cancer. So you got to do what you got to do. But
what was it? Live large, die large, leave a big coffin.
right.
So, so you're in panic mode. You're just grasping at straws. What straws did you find that worked? What was? Because you're still here, apparently. I mean, it worked.
Yeah. No, I think that there's things that I found that I still continue to do today that I found that were helpful.
Yeah.
Some of those I picked up when I went to Tijuana. There was a cancer clinic in Tijuana called Hope for Cancer, called like an all-inclusive cancer clinic is a good way to think of it. And there was a doctor there. He's a functional medicine doctor. His name is Dr. Curiel. And he was the one that really turned my mind on to, mental, emotional health. but also spiritual health. And so there's still things that I do from that clinic in terms of that. And then also fasting protocols. That was very big in controlling my cancer throughout the process. Ketogenic diets, cold water therapies, coffee enemas. I know everybody loves that.
Yeah, we've talked about butt chugging coffee in Tijuana before. So we had that conversation at Radina's.
Oh,
like
really?
about 4 or 5 of us guys was talking about butt chugging coffee.
Nice.
It was like 6 o'clock in the morning on a Friday. So all the churchgoers absolutely loved that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, so just some of those things that have kind of stuck over the years. But if you ask me today, like what I think is the most healthy thing that you could do for your body, I believe it'd be your spiritual health.
Okay.
And then it flows out through there.
Okay, so you go through a bunch of stuff, everywhere from coffee enemas, cold plunge therapies, and this is all spanning of from 2019 after getting the diagnosis to I guess today.
Yeah.
So for 6 years, you've been kind of going on this, and you say you still do some of the stuff. I'm assuming you don't do butt chugging coffee anymore, or is that? I mean, is that something we have to figure out how to do now for the boys' coffee on Friday morning?
I mean, if you guys want,
Yeah.
but I think we should probably not do it at Radina's.
Yeah. Well, maybe Brothers will let us do it.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Go over there in the corner.
So, how much of that stuff would you say if you had at peak 100, you're doing 100% of the stuff?
Yeah.
Would you say you're still doing about 60-70% of it, of the things that you were doing to kind of get yourself better?
Well, currently probably 50. I need to be better. But it's just that complacency.
I think we all need to be better.
Yeah, so
yeah. That complacency kind of gets in. You get a window of I'm healthy, I'm healed, and you stop doing the things that you need to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So, when did you start noticing? So you guys were trying all the natural stuff. Were you also doing the conventional med stuff on the side as well, on top of the natural side, or did you just say, damn it, we don't care, and we're just going to do whatever we want?
Yeah. So it's going to take some time to get to
we got
that.
we got an hour and a half still to go.
Well, I'll start from Tijuana then. So eventually, we did all the natural things. We were doing the best that we could. We were working with the VA. We had an oncologist at the time who was willing to support us with scans and keeping track of things, and support us as long as he felt that the cancer wasn't progressing.
Yeah.
And so we got to a point where he saw on a scan that it looked like there was some progression, and based off of what he had seen physically with the tumor, it appeared that what we were trying at home wasn't working.
Okay.
Now, we did have a few months where it was. I remember at the time that we were leaning heavily into the juicing protocols, thinking more phytonutrients would be good. Looking back on it now, I know that the juicing, what it was really doing was it was stripping away all the valuable parts of those, plant medicines. And what we were really doing was we were upping the glucose intake.
Okay.
So if you think about an apple, right? You juice an apple and you're devoid of all of the dietary fiber and you're left with sugars. So as soon as you drink that, it's somewhat similar to drinking a soda, right? Then it becomes a processed sugar. So what we were actually doing that we thought was healthy for me was feeding my cancer.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, which is also, a little bit of a word of caution. You can't just run to the internet and think that what I'm reading here when it comes to natural medicines is going to be the right answer for me.
And it's one of those, for the past 15, 20 years, everyone's doing juice cleanses and juice diets and losing weight and, getting gut biomes in check because they are juicing all this stuff. Now it feels like in the past, I know you probably have been seeing it longer, but for like the past year now, it seems like everyone the science on it's changed. It's like, don't do that, because now you're just essentially processing your food to be, devoid. You still get the nutrients, but it's just a sugar dump plus nutrients rather than a meal or food.
Right.
So it's kind of weird how that science is. I'm going to use air quotes science, the bro science on it. Maybe that's a better way to describe it. How that's been changing so much, and how it's a simple thing of, hey, if I drink apple and carrot juice every day, it should be good. It's like, no, it's actually doing worse. Just eat a fucking carrot. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of other things to consider with that too. Just also there is some protection that you get with the plant fibers when it comes to pesticides. Yeah. Right. So, there's so many things, so many reasons to eat a whole food diet that is as natural as you could muster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So after we got through that, just realizing that what we were doing at home wasn't working, we were going to need some help. Then my wife, through her networks, figured out that Hope for Cancer could be a good option.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we didn't have the cash, because I think we were getting quotes, and it was less than this eventually, but it was going to be $50,000 for us to go down and stay for 3 weeks and get enrolled into their program. So we started fundraising for that. And fortunately, with the community that we have, they rallied around us and they helped us get down there. And where I was at before we went, I was pretty bad off. I had a couple of times where it was like, oh, I don't know if Josh is going to make it.
Yeah.
And right before we went down there, I would say that was one of those times. So we got down to Tijuana, went through that. They got me to a place of stability. But before that happened, and this really stood out to me as a complete oversight when it comes to patient care within the VA. Kind of the breaking point for me, I went into my oncologist's office, and it was completely different from our first visit. When we initially met him, there was a social worker there.
Mm-hmm.
They were telling me about everything. They're like, "Are you okay? We have resources. We're going to support you."
Yeah.
And this visit was different. There was like 4 or 5 doctors in there, no social worker, and they were all standing up. I was sitting down, and they were talking at me, and they were basically saying, if you don't do what we're recommending with the vismodegib, that in the radiation, I believe, they're basically saying, get your affairs in order. You're going to be dead in 4 months. Right. So it was like a scare tactic to get me to do the treatment plan that they felt was best for me.
Yeah.
Didn't work. I kind of ran out of that situation. Was pretty upset, kind of crying, because they just told me I'm going to die. I have 3 small kids. And I don't know how it happened, because before this I wasn't a big poster, but I just did a video, kind of weepingly said what was going on and pushed it out on the social media. And after that, we just kind of got a lot of support. So we were able to make better decisions. And that ended up leading me to Tijuana. And
it's I know Tijuana has kind of become now a medical. I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. Kind of like a weird sanctuary where there's a lot of these interesting treatments that happen in Tijuana.
Yeah.
Like stem cells, cancer therapies, because it's not under the purview of the FDA, so it can be a lot more
open,
a lot more you can do a lot more interesting things for people. Now, the problem is you have to go to Tijuana, Mexico, and the stigma behind that is so it's always fun to hear. It's interesting to hear you say I was doing the VA, I was doing all this conventional stuff. So this is how I got to Tijuana. It sounds like some some sort of like drug smuggling
Right,
story.
right. Oh yeah, Tijuana's great too. I remember my wife; she'd never been out of the country,
Yeah.
so she was really sketched out when we were going to Tijuana. And Hope for Cancer is great. They had somebody that comes and gets you from the airport in America and drives you across the border, so you don't got to deal with all that. But she's talking to our driver on the way in, and she's like, "So, is it safe?" And he's like, yeah. And so, eventually he talks her and gets her comforted. And, we get to the clinic, we get settled in, and then we're getting ready to go to bed. We're laying in bed, and all of a sudden we hear pop, pop. And I was like, what was that? I'm like, go to bed. Because I knew what it was.
It's not our business. That's what it is.
Yeah. So then we wake up the next morning, we walk outside front of the clinic, right below our bedroom window, and we look out to our left, and there's this caution tape, and there'd just been murder by the cartel for one of these lower level drug guys who were on the wrong turf.
Yeah.
And so my wife had Uriel, that was the driver's name. Our wife had an earful for Uriel. Next time she saw him, she was like, "You told me it was safe."
But I mean, he was like,
I mean, for Tijuana, it's pretty safe. That sounds pretty safe. Like, you could get shot. I mean,
Right.
you did pretty good.
Well, he did say, that they don't shoot the Americans,
That's right. Yeah, I mean,
like to a point, right?
yeah.
They know that's bad for business.
Yeah, it's this incredibly interesting thing about like you go to these like, a lot of these foreign countries. Everyone knows you're American. Like if you go to like I was just in Puerto Rico. Everyone know when we were American. There's no hiding it.
Yeah.
You go to Mexico. There's no hiding that you're an American. And the amount of cultural, even criminal organizations, social organizations that have either are dedicated just to you and or dedicated to protecting you, because if you get injured or you get hurt and tell your buddies don't go to Tijuana or Puerto Rico, now that's bad for business.
Right.
So it's like there's a weird racketeering with that as well. That as Uriel probably said, it's not going to hurt Americans, because if Americans get hurt, then all this goes away.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was about as American as you get down there. I looked really American to all them. I remember while we were down there, it was Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to fit in because they were decorating, and I wanted, to like show my support. I went out to one of these real touristy stores, and I got like what's the animal that spits with the long neck?
Llamas?
Yeah,
Or alpacas?
Alpaca. I think it was like an alpaca poncho, right? And a hat. It was just like green, like dressed nice poncho, not traditional at all. And I started walking around oh man, I started walking around the clinic, yeah, and I had my get up on, and my nurse, I remember he had I don't remember his name. It was like Omar, but he had told me a phrase to say, and basically what it meant was like, "What's up, bitches?" And so I'm walking around, and I was like, "What's up, bitches?" And they're just all looking at me, and they're just like, "You look like," because it was green, like, "You look like Green Lantern, like you look like Arrow, like." Just like making fun of me, dogging on me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
So how long are you in Tijuana for?
We made some trips, but 3 weeks the first visit, and then after that, we would go down for a week. I think we did that 2 times before we got to the end. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't working either. And so we got to the end of Hope for Cancer, where basically there was nothing else that they could do.
So there's no hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems very like counter commercial.
Yeah.
Hope
Yeah.
for Cancer. Oh, we were out of options. So.
Right.
What were some of the things that they were doing while you were there?
Yeah. It was a lot. So one of the therapies that I received, or the treatment that I received, was photodynamic therapy, where they were trying to use different waves of light to attack the cancer cells. So they would give me an IV, and it was curcumin. And so while I would get that IV, then I would get a laser treatment, a laser light treatment, different laser lights. And it was cool, kind of neat. What they would do is they put a catheter into your vein. So you have this this light in your vein, and then they give you this intravenous fluid. I don't remember what it was exactly, but essentially what happened was the fluid was activated by the light, and so then that would go and attack the cancer cells. There were, now I don't just want to throw Hope for Cancer under the bus and say that they don't do any good.
Yeah.
When we first showed up, there was a patient there, and like I said, a lot of the times people go get their treatment conventionally, get to the end of it, hey, there's nothing we can do for you, and then they end up at places like these as like a last hope. So we went there. There was a patient, he had a stomach cancer, and our entire first night we didn't really sleep because all we heard was this man next to us down the hall retching because he just vomited nonstop.
Wow.
And yeah, it was 2 weeks after we were there, we saw him standing up, walking tall out of that place.
Oh, wow.
And was that with the same type of treatment, or is it completely
No,
different?
they had different types of treatment.
Okay.
There were a lot of people who were on my treatment. There was a lady there who had a bone cancer that was in her spine, and my wife, she's kept in contact with her. I think she might have talked to her last year, and she's still alive, still doing well.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, to Tijuana a couple times. What other things are like going on for your treatment that you guys are doing, or that you're going and seeking?
Yeah. So at that point we got back, and Tijuana was no longer working, or I should say, it wasn't working in me, and so we kind of get to the point where it's like, okay, we got to do something. So we go back to the VA. We talk to that same oncologist who kind of orchestrated that scare tactic, and we're talking to him. He does this physical examination of me and says, well, I don't even think vismodegib would help you at this point, the cancer drug that he kind of offered the first time. And this is an important detail I want to tie to the Tijuana story. While we were there, the doctor that we were seeing wanted to pair the vismodegib, the vismodegib drug that the VA oncologist had recommended the first time we went to go see him.
Yeah.
The oncologist we were seeing in Tijuana wanted to pair that with the integrative treatments that I was doing. So, that could have made what was happening in Tijuana a little bit more efficacy, have a little bit more efficacy.
Yeah.
But my wife and I just kind of at that point felt like we were on the outs with the VA, with how we left it, how we were treated in the oncologist office, and with just the general confusion that happens with where we were at mentally.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, I get it.
Go ahead.
No. Without going on too big of a tangent, we can always come back to it later. And I want to actually preface. I'm going to do a big stamp. We are not doctors here. We're not medical professionals. If you're suffering from something, seek medical attention. Make the best decision with you and your doctor and your family. These are just anecdotal stories, so don't take this as medical advice, because you were talking about your father-in-law that had the whole blood thing, blood cancer. I had a very similar story with my mother. She was when I was about 18 years old, was diagnosed with breast cancer, and went through the chemotherapies, went through the treatments, tried a bunch of different weird drugs. Eventually, she just got a mastectomy. Went away, came back. Went away, came back. It was kind of like that back and forth for about, God, I don't even know how long. About 6 years, 7 years. And then got the double mastectomy, but then it already, I can't remember the term, but it metastasized to bones. And then eventually went up the spine, ended up killing her. And there was all these new drugs to try out, new things to try out. That the entire time, there was no change in diet. There was no change in lifestyle. There was, heavy alcohol. I mean, not alcoholism. I don't want to say that about my mother, but There's still alcohol. There was still a diet consisting of like, heavy brown sugar and bacon and, these very not delicate, these very just overgorging on food and everything like that. A lot of weight loss, and the way she lost weight was switched from Heineken to gin. That was how she, it's like,
clear alcohol.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like
So
that
what you're
sort
saying
of stuff.
is,
So what I'm saying is, so it's interesting to hear other people's life stories that deal with cancer because, and she eventually passed in 2017. So I was about, that was like 7 years ago. So I was like in my, early 30s. So for like 12, 15 years, we dealt with this from, having a mother to having a husk of a person that's just on so much medication that they're not real people anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's good to hear that, there's other options rather than just blindly following whatever the doctor bullies you to do.
yeah.
I know that was a big thing with when I first started kind of getting into the cancer stuff was I'm like, well, you went to the on-post doctor. Can we go talk to somebody else about this? And eventually we got to, while we were at Leavenworth, got to KU Med, and KU Med was and also through the VA, we're doing the very similar things. Like, if you don't take this specific drug that we're going to give you, you will die in X amount of times, or we're going to try this new experimental thing. And then you also have those stories of like, doctors just peddle drugs on people because it's a money thing. It's the big pharma.
No,
and
that never happens.
Never happens.
Never happens.
Right. And you already alluded to it, and we'll cover back into it. There's more than just go to doctor, take pill, feel better. There's the spiritual side. There's the nutritional side. There's all these different aspects that help get a person better, not just a pill you get from your doctor. So Tijuana's not working. Efficacy. I went on my tirade about the big pharma.
Yeah.
Consult your doctor. Make sound decisions with your doctors and your families. Don't just take some random guy on a podcast's word of my anecdotal story about what happened to me. So, Tijuana wasn't working. You went back to the VA, or it was working, but it's not. Staying. The treatments aren't. I can't remember the term you used. Efficacy.
The efficacy of the treatments.
Yes. And now you go back to the VA, and they're doing the same thing, saying, "Hey, take this drug."
No, actually, no. They said he wasn't going to give me the drug.
Okay.
And so at that point, he said, "I'm referring you on to the radiation oncologist out of Kansas City." And we had a meeting with him, and it was similar. It was 33 or 36 rounds of radiation.
Mm-hmm.
I think his exact words to my wife over the phone were, "We're just going to try to blast this thing away," or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I asked, "Can we go to MD Anderson?" Because that was, when we went to KU, that was one of the first tidbits that we heard was he needs to go to MD Anderson because they're the head and neck cancer experts.
Yeah.
Like, period.
And where is that?
It's in Houston.
Houston.
Yeah. And so when I brought that up to the oncologist, he had basically said, "Well, if you're going to do that, that's going to come out of your own pocket."
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even entertained. Like, he didn't ask anybody, and then, we're, at this point, around this time, we get linked up with the 107 Foundation.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that on this platform.
I don't.
107. Okay.
No, I haven't heard about it.
Go ahead.
If you want to.
Yeah. So Chelsea with the 107 Foundation, they got the name. So I believe her husband. I hope I don't get the story wrong, but I believe her husband was Special Forces ODA, and their sergeant major had a strange cancer and ended up passing away. And so his call sign was Hunter 7. So Chelsea is a clinical nurse. She does a lot of research into toxic exposures and different elements in the veteran community,
which doesn't happen in the veteran. Oh, sorry, I was about to correct. It doesn't happen in the veterans community at all.
Yeah. No, she's doing a great service.
Yeah.
A great service for sure. And so 107 Foundation is to memorialize her her husband's and maybe even hers, Sergeant Major. And so what they do, they offer that research, and they raise awareness. They go to Capitol Hill. They lobby for veterans in that space. I was actually able to go out with them during the signing of the PACT Act, and got to watch President Biden sign the PACT Act right there, and shake Jon Stewart's hand, and be involved with that process, which was a really cool story for me. And even tell Jon Stewart a little bit of my story face to face, which was surreal. But anyways, we got hooked up with the 107 Foundation, and they were offering us support. They were going to pay financially to cover some of the travel, and even getting us hooked up with contacts so that we could get Senator Moran's office involved and have them talk to the VA on our behalf so that they would approve our care. Before all that happened, before Senator Moran's office got in contact with the VA, the head of oncology at the VA was basically saying, we're not going to let you go. And I don't know this. This is an assumption, but I'm assuming it's because I was an interesting case and somebody wanted me to be a notch on their belt. Yeah. So to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like almost like a guinea pig, I guess. Not a guinea pig, but yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I was an interesting case. Still am, just from the conversations I had with my doctor.
Well, it sounds like this is an interesting cancer to begin with, because this is not something I've ever even heard of before. Not that I'm, an expert on different types of cancer, but
I know one guy that has it. Had it.
Exactly. So to hear some type, to hear this story is incredibly intriguing. So from a doctor standpoint, I can only imagine that they would be like, "Oh yeah, this is my dude. I'm going to take care of this."
Yeah.
So
it was
because I'm not to interrupt again, but this is like from my layman's viewpoint, as a doctor, this is something that someone will eventually end up writing a paper on, and get some type of award because they found this new type of cancer and were able to treat it by X, Y, and Z, and so they get all the back pats and everything while you're getting prodded and poked on and everything else, So I can only imagine that was kind of some of the motivation that they may have tried to, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. It's my assumption, like I said, so I don't want to draw lines that I can't connect fully.
Of course, yeah.
But, I say all that, and at that time, it was just a wild time, because there was a pretty good month or two where I was heavily considering my own mortality, how I'm going to live, trying to use my brain. And the other, I don't think I've mentioned this, but the cancer I have is really painful. There's a lot of people who have cancer who don't ever know until it's really close to the end. But with where my cancer was at, the nerve bundles that it was affecting, the spinal involvement, I had pain throughout my body. And there was I basically had to walk around holding my head up for a long period of time. And so, that pain, I only say that because a little bit of pain, like, we're all tough guys, right?
Sure.
Like, we get hurt, we're like, oh yeah, shake it off. But that consistent, constant pain, that'll mess with your mind.
Yeah.
And then considering your own mortality, like knowing that this pain you're feeling is just the slow tick of death coming for you. And then relying on people all around me to step up and take care of me, relying on people that I still haven't met, having conversations with, people in the VA, people in Senator Moran's office, having all these conversations on my behalf, and me sitting in limbo of like, well, hopefully I get to go to MD Anderson. So, my wife scheduled pictures that fall before we went to MD Anderson. And, I think we both kind of knew, like, this might be the last time we do that.
Sure.
And we were driving back. I remember this pretty vividly. And I was talking to my wife, and I was like, we got to do something. So I told her, like, either I think I'm just going to go to the VA and I'm going to let them radiate me, you know, because this is better than just letting this thing chew away at me, because I'm going to die either way.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of go out blaze of glory type thing.
Yeah.
You know. And so we talked through it. It's about a 45-minute drive away from where we did pictures. And on the way back, ultimately, we decided, well, I'm just going to give it the night. I'm going to pray on it. And so I do. And that next morning, I wake up and I get a call from someone high up in the VA. I think she was with oncology in some way. And she called to tell me that we have approved your community care referral. We're going to send you to MD Anderson.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was.
And so when was this? 21, 22?
I want to say 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right. And then so we had to wait for the community care referral to get processed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy, that's when it begins.
Yeah.
But so I guess it was a huge, burden lifted off of you and your family at that point, where it's like, hey, we're actually winning now. We're actually getting what we need, or what we think we need, to get down to, get this better care at this point. So
It was hope.
Huh.
We had no hope,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had a little bit of hope.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, as far as the VA goes, because obviously I'm a service connected veteran, so I have to go into the VA every year to do an annual physical, and any type of whatever they want to do, I have to do. Was there a point where the VA was like, if you don't do what we're telling you needs to be done, like we're going to cut off benefits, or you're going to, have some of your, benefits taken away from you? Or is there any talk like that? Or was there more of a collaborative spirit for the most part to get you the care that you needed?
Yeah, no, I mean, there was never anything malicious like that.
Okay.
And there was never anything malicious in the oncologist's office either.
Sure.
I think the way that the VA is set up, it's just a challenging task.
Yeah.
To manage that level of care,
Mm-hmm.
right? To have, I think this is the only, really the only federal level of care,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I would think so. Yeah.
You go to cancer centers, but like with the VA, you can move throughout the VA and you don't have to worry about licensing,
Right.
right? Like clinicians at the VA can go from here to there. But it's also has a tendency to be siloed, especially when you get more rural,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get to these bigger centers and they have the capacity to have more of a collaborative effort. But with me, like going to the Topeka VA, that oncologist there had to consult the radiation oncologist in Kansas City, right? And they don't have the same tech that places like KU and MD Anderson have to allow them, or the infrastructure to allow them to be collaborative in that sense. And I only say all that because everybody's doing the best that they can with what they have in their bubble.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that up is I wouldn't say we, I don't want to espouse everybody, but there have been tons of horror stories about the VA, and just talking with my dad, he will tell you, oh, the VA, they're horrible. They killed my dad,
Yeah.
like according to my dad, they killed my grandfather,
Sure.
because of the care that he received in Wichita. You hear other people that are, always saying, well, in order for me to get whatever procedure, I had to wait months and months and months, and they start espousing that the VA is nothing more than the Canadian healthcare system.
So it's socialized medicine. That's what it is. So you get to deal with all the fun things of socialized medicine.
Exactly. So I wanted to make sure that we cut through that to say, hey, look, this is a very difficult and tricky situation, for somebody that has a cancer that's, I would say, fairly rare. Would that be accurate? Is it kind of a rare cancer?
Rare in the sense of how it behaved.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So, so to hear that the VA was doing the best that they could is actually great kind of good to hear. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh yeah, and the VA has not paid me.
yeah.
Well, for this,
Yeah.
I can thank disability benefits, but I have nothing bad to say about the care that I've got from the VA. They've been very forthright, very considerate of me and my family, and they've helped us get to where we need to be with the MD Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
They've paid for all the treatments. There's never been a question of, do you still need to go to MD Anderson? Like, can't we do this part of your treatment here?
Yeah.
Because they could. They could say that. I believe I've heard people talk about, having issues with community care referrals and having to go through that, with some of their stuff. But I think the piece of it that I have that maybe some of these other stories don't is self-advocacy.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great point. Yeah.
I mean, you have to have that wherever you go, whatever medical establishment you go to.
And it's good to hear because, obviously you're saying that you had to go to the Topeka VA, which is where I go, for the 99% of my care. So I've always had a great experience there.
I heard the food sucks, but
I haven't eaten any of the food there. But
my dad's been in and out of there for like the past couple months.
Oh,
yeah. He was talking about like he got like boiled chicken one time for like a meal. That's all it was, like a boiled chicken for us. That's all it was.
Wow.
He was super upset about it.
Yeah, I mean, outside of some small little, little tiny things, I've gotten exceptional care.
Yeah.
And anytime I go in and talk to my doctor, he's very kind of to the point, and I'll ask him something, and he'll just be like, I mean, yeah, let's get that figured out, So I've got this thing on my arm here. I don't know what it is. It's just this weird little bump. It looks like a wart.
Yeah.
But I told him, I was like, man, it's not a wart, and I know what a wart is. This isn't it. And he's like, well, we'll just get it checked out, and boom, referral, just like that,
Nice.
which is really cool. So I've been fortunate in that aspect of it. But like I said, we've at least I have grown up listening to all of these horror stories, and then have to, sit down and talk with my dad and work through his emotions with what he experienced with the VA down in Wichita, and what they did to his dad, and the quote unquote lack of care that they seem to have given him, which I don't know if that's the case or not. I wasn't there, so I can't say.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear you say that, and kind of reassures me that what I'm seeing is kind of somewhat, at least from our perspectives, pretty consistent, So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, that's good to hear as well, because, likewise, I do hear a lot of those horror stories. And to be fair, we do have a good one at Topeka.
Yeah.
They're in the, I think, patient approval rating. It's high up there, 90th percentile.
Yeah.
And to be fair, there's also facilities, like out in Colorado that necessarily aren't meeting the mark.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it was interesting because I got an email from, it wasn't Moran. What's the other senator's name? I can't think of his name.
Moran and
anyway,
I was just watching it today because he was one of the guys that Moran descended from the Doge cuts.
Oh, okay.
There was a whole stink about it, but I can't remember the other guy's name.
Anyway,
sorry. Yeah.
I got an email from the other senator. I can't think of his name right now, but they were talking about how the Wichita VA is like the top in the state, and I'm like,
wow.
Well, there's what, like
2,
4,
no,
maybe?
I guess Leavenworth, Topeka, Wichita,
and then maybe one out west somewhere, like Dodge or Garden or somewhere.
I don't think there is.
No, anyway, but I mean, so
there might be like another one in the Kansas City area.
Yeah,
but
yeah. But I thought it was kind of interesting. I got that email and it's like, Wichita's the top VA in the state, and I'm like, okay.
It's like when you get a text at like 8:00 in the morning saying I got like 3rd place on my age group for a 5K out of 5 people.
There were 14. All right, dude. And you know what? If I would have stuck around, I would have met Bill Snyder. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
and I would have gotten a special medal. So.
Oh, you didn't get your medal at all?
I did. No, we took off. I didn't know anything was happening.
Yeah, 5Ks are rough, man. I get it.
I ran it in a decent time too, and I haven't ran hardly at all this year. I've ran like maybe 3 times the most so far this year. So, and still to be on track for a 4x36, I think that was pretty decent.
Yeah.
So, now the guy who took first, we're totally going on a tangent, but
Okay.
Yeah.
the
This
guy
is how
who,
this happens.
the guy who took first,
Excited for it.
his time was something like, it was like 23 or 24 minutes.
Yeah.
It was like he was averaging just over 7 minute miles, and I'm like,
That could be you, man.
It could be me. Yeah, I was sitting there. I was
Nah, you
thinking
got
to
too
myself, I
short
was
of
like,
legs. Your legs are too short for that, man.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So I'll take second. Third's not bad neither.
So it's 2021, MD Anderson.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, yeah.
Let's get back on track. So MD Anderson, you get a community referral. You go as Hunter 7 helping getting you down there, or are you guys moving down there? What's kind of going on?
It's a multifaceted approach that you would have to ask my wife about.
Okay.
Because I was face
fair.
down in a pillow in so much pain, just like clinging to life. I couldn't tell you the details of it.
Man,
No.
that's an interesting point. Is that how you had to sleep, like on your belly every night?
I had to sleep oddly enough, on my right side, which is the side that the cancer was on.
Okay.
And curl up like this. And if I stayed curled up in this contorted way and didn't move all night, I could get a good night's sleep, which never happened because
Exactly.
Yeah.
you move.
I just figured because it was on your kind of behind your ear and neck area
Yeah.
that you'd almost have to sleep on your stomach, so which is I can't do that anymore. So
Yeah. No,
So-
there's only one position.
it's interesting. Yeah.
But we there was a period of time, 3 weeks, maybe a month, where we're just sitting there waiting for this thing to process. There's an intake process that happens with MD Anderson, of course, which adds some time to it as well. But we do eventually end up getting down there. While we're waiting, though, my brother dies of melanoma.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, we both had skin cancer around the same time, and we're very fortunate to be able to bring him out here to where I was so that we could try to help facilitate his healing too. But it's just a whole crazy time. So while we're waiting for all this to happen, I remember we did my brother's celebration of life, and I couldn't even stay standing up for the whole thing. I did my best, did all my routine to get into the best state that I could so I could manage the pain for the hour that we had to be there. But eventually ended up going into a room off to the side and kind of laying down and just letting it happen. I was in so much pain I didn't even have enough energy to mourn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we end up getting down to MD Anderson around January 15th. And we go through the gamut. We're there for about 3 weeks. The first week is meeting all the doctors who are going to be on our team. I had a neck surgeon, radiation oncologist, dermatologist, all of them, spinal surgeon. And they're all just kind of looking at me. And then they have this tumor board, where they imagine like Grey's Anatomy. They're all sitting in that classroom.
Right.
And, Dr. Gray is like sitting there talking about my cancer type, and they're deciding the best course of action to treat me. And what they decide is that the high levels of radiation would have killed me. So the treatment that the VA was pushing for and trying to tie me to would have done me in.
Wow.
And the best course of action was to give me the vismodegib that the oncologist said would do me no good. And it actually turned out to be the drug that saved my life at that point in time, because it stopped cancer. By the end of it, I remember, just a small detail, I remember walking around that big campus and I refused to sit in a wheelchair. But I was also in so much pain that I'd have to stop wherever I had to stop. And so I would just lay on the floor, and there's always a big fall concern when you're hospitalized.
Oh yeah.
So I always had all these nurses running up to me. Are you okay? Are you need help? And it's like a wheelchair. I'm like, get that thing away from me. And so I just say that to kind of highlight the condition that I was in while I was there. And I just remember the faces on the doctors and the nurses when they kind of came in and saw me. It was reaffirming what I was thinking, which was I'm going to die. And the biggest win, I would say, or the biggest deposit, I guess, in my Hope bank account was when my head and neck surgeon, he never actually performed surgery on me, but I remember he put his hand on my shoulder and he looked me in the eye and he said, "We're going to take care of you." And that was like, I don't know, for whatever reason, that was all I needed.
Yeah.
And I went home, came back maybe a month. Yeah, maybe a month. And they were all just like, "Oh, we're surprised to see you."
Right on. That's pretty interesting.
Okay, so the Vismodegib. What's the drug?
Vismodegib?
Yeah, Vismodegib. Worked. It got rid of the cancer, and you've had a clean bill of health since. Or
No.
Relatively.
So,
like
no.
This.
That actually was, so that worked for about 7 months.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. And so that
Saga
was,
continues.
yeah, I know, right? I don't know if we have enough time for all this.
No, we got plenty of time.
So that was when we first got like a breath. And we were like, "Oh, finally," and just trying to process everything that had just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife actually brought it up, but she's like, "Well, what if we just sell everything and go live in an RV and travel full time?" And I was like, "Okay." So yeah, that's what we did. We sold our house and took the space to breathe and traveled and saw some things and had a whole nother adventure until that drug stopped working.
Wow. And you had 3 kids with you too.
Yeah.
That was probably pretty cramped with the RV.
No, because
I would say that the thing they got was fucking. I remember seeing.
Oh,
photos of
really?
This thing was huge.
my wife doesn't camp. So when she said I want an RV, it's like it has to have a full kitchen, and this thing was done up. It was pretty cute. It was set up too for boondocking.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
it had like 4 full-size panels on the roof and a battery bank and an inverter and all that. It was pretty sweet.
I mean, the only time I ever saw your camper was the Camper World Saga.
Yeah, and it was sweet except when it wasn't sweet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I remember Camping World. Oh, Camping World. You're bringing up all my demons, Jeff.
That's what we're here for. Get them all out. Yeah, I remember that whole saga because you were selling it, right? That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were looking at selling it, and I didn't want to go through the process of listing it because we went traveling. We had to come back. We had to cut it short. We were going to do a full year, but we had to cut it short because my cancer came back. And when we realized it, we were all the way on the West Coast. So I had to get my family back home. We eventually parked behind my mother-in-law's house. And, I got my family situated so I could go back and start doing treatments again in MD Anderson. And so, at some point we decided that we wanted to sell a camper. I called Camping World. They said, "Oh, we'll even come and get it and take it and give you a quote." And I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah." So the guy shows up to get my camper. I'm already a little sketched out because I had a pretty big truck with a long wheelbase. It was, I don't remember the longest bed for a
Probably 8 foot.
3,500. Yeah, 8-foot
Oh.
bed. But this guy shows up and he's got like a 5.5 foot bed. It's like a short diesel. I was like, okay, I guess you're confident. So then that's the first thing, first flag. Second flag was he didn't even have the right hitch for it. And so I'm just like, what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know. So then I had to work with him, fix his truck up so he could hitch up to my trailer and pull it out. And there's a ditch on either side of the driveway to get out of my mother-in-law's. And so I didn't even think I should have said, "Hey, go real wide, take it slow," because obviously this guy didn't know what he was doing. And he just took off like a bat out of hell, went right through the ditch, high centered it. I watched the whole thing like shifting around, and the first thing I thought in my head was the frame. So I called Camping World. They figure it out. Eventually, like, we spend all day out there waiting for the wrecker to come get it. They get it out of the ditch, which was also another damage point. And long story short, they get it to Camping World. Camping World looks at it, says, no, we can't touch this because of all the modifications that you've made on the inside. There's no way that we can sell this. I was like, hold on. So you wreck my trailer, and then you get it to assess it, and now you're saying that you can't do anything to sell it after you told me you're going to take care of it? And so eventually we had to get lawyers involved. I remember talking to corporate Camping World, and, his name is Jason. If I ever meet this guy, it's going to be hard for me not to punch him in the mouth. But he just starts yelling at me over the phone. Like, he's trying to do the business thing, but he's just being really aggressive, like, kind of accusing me of doing some shady practices. Yeah. And so eventually we get Camping World to settle. We get far less than what we were going to, like 10,000 less than what we had originally thought, what we'd agreed upon in conversations. And at that point, I just felt like it was the 10,000 loss was worth the stress of not having to go through a long, lengthy legal battle when I'm getting ready to go back and get cancer treatments done.
For sure.
No.
Way to go, Jefe.
I remember a lot of these stories I saw from afar because it was either through Facebook stories, because spoiler or little I would say spoiler alert, our Josh's wife and my wife are friends, so they talk about a bunch of this stuff too. And then Josh also goes to the communal church gym thing that we go to, the Church of Iron. And so this is how we started kind of getting involved each other, but become friends and getting part of this story. And it's good to hear like the full thing, because I never heard the full thing. That's why I was kind of interested. I really wanted to come sit down and do this. So I know the full story from the horse's mouth rather than the hearsay that my wife has been espousing or what we hear at the gym. And then also it's just a great story to hear. So
thanks, man.
So you guys comes back, you guys go back to MD Anderson. What happens next?
Yeah, so we get back to MD Anderson. Obviously they make adjustments. So at this point they'd done the phase 1 drug, which was the vismotojib. So now I have more options, because if you're not familiar, they have phase 1 drugs that they approve for certain conditions. And after they go through the process that they have to approve new drugs, they call those phase 2 drugs, right? So maybe they're not vetted enough to be in the pool of phase 1. So this wasn't an option until I went through the first drug. Kind of weird.
Yep.
So we get to immunotherapy now. Okay, with what my cancer is doing, they're kind of looking at it from all aspects again. They have their tumor board. They do the same thing, same Grey's Anatomy, classroom stuff. And the treatment now goes to immunotherapy paired with this low-level radiation. They called it a quad shot, where over 2 days you get 4 treatments of radiation. And my radiation oncologist said that you can have up to 4 of these. I guess that's the limit. I believe we only ended up getting 2 total. Yeah. So I go back and, man, we talked earlier about radiation treatments and my experience with that. So that was a low-level treatment. I got that paired with my immunotherapy, and I don't know if it was just the die-off from that initial treatment, or my body like adjusting to all of this, but I was sick for a couple weeks. And while I was getting the treatments, and here we go. While I was getting the treatments, I was planning on fasting, because there's literature that if you fast during chemotherapy, that's why there's a company called, there's companies that sell these fasting mimicking diets. Yeah. And they do that because it increases the efficacy of chemotherapies. Okay. Right. And it also has your body protects itself a little better from the damaging effects of these treatments because it goes into kind of like a protection mode, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it biologically, you know, if you're out there in the wild and then all of a sudden you're not giving your body food anymore, it's like, okay, I need to eat. So it puts itself in a bit of a protective state and allows your senses to focus a little bit more so that you can go off and do what you need to do to find more food.
Yeah.
So that was
incidentally Senator Marshall.
That's what it was. Yes,
yeah,
sorry.
Dr. Marshall.
Yeah, because he sends us anybody who now it's like a really weird thing. Anybody who graduates Police Academy now gets a signed letter from him saying like, congratulations, you did it. Like, well, you've been a senator for how many years now?
Exactly. Yeah.
And now you're starting to do it?
Yeah.
Anyways.
It
I don't have one, by the way.
I get emails from him like weekly. It's letters from the doctor, you know, or letter from the doctor, you know, and so it makes it sound like, oh, my doctor just sent me a letter. Oh,
No,
it's just a politician.
That's how he gets you.
Yeah.
goddamn Loch Ness monster.
That's funny.
So
Anyway.
Go through these brand new sets of treatments, and this is probably what, 2023, 24?
Yeah, probably 2023. Yeah, I'm sure I'm getting this wrong. My wife's going to hear this and say, no. I have it written down somewhere.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, these are just general guesstimates. Like, if you'd ask me what I was doing in 2023, outside of having a kid, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no.
Yes, no, sorry.
That's fine. So, yeah, just basically, to long story short, immunotherapy, quad shot radiation. And so I was doing some things on the side, you know, some integrative things, fasting specifically. But anyway, what I was talking about was I had intended to go into this and fast and try to make these treatments work a little bit better than they would for the patient who was not doing this.
Yeah.
Because there was literature that I read on this and it was being talked about in the space at the time. And it worked, but what I should have been doing was a fasting mimicking diet because completely devoiding my body of food was causing some GI distress.
Yeah.
And so I guess having a little bit of food would have made that better. You know, so I guess that's a warning for going off the rails and just trying to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've tried, I've done 24-hour, I've done Army mandated 42-hour fasts before.
Yeah.
But I've done maybe 24 hours max, and I can imagine trying to do, you know, because I know you've talked about doing several days fasting. You've done that before.
Yeah, 3 to 5 was regular for me for a while. I would do that monthly, 3 to 5 days, and then that time when I was doing it for that treatment, it was 6 days, and 6 days is about the longest that I've went.
But you're still allowed water, black coffee, that sort of stuff. Just no.
Yep, water, black coffee, herbal teas. Actually, herbal teas are really good to drink when you're doing this prolonged fast. Yeah.
Golden milk?
Probably not.
No.
Well, it just depends. There's so many definitions for fasting. You could be a Puritan about it and say only water, right? The way I do it is I'm doing it to not torture myself.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I'll have electrolytes, black coffee, and things like that. But I think the rule is no more than 500 calories in a day, or it's not considered a fast.
Yeah, I remember when we do keto, we also do intermittent fasting along with it. And one of the things you just look into it. I used to do keto coffees because they will say, "Oh, it's not breaking the fast; it's just giving you stuff that would break your fast." And you're like, I don't understand why this works.
Yeah.
But I just like I'm kind of getting weak now. I've grown accustomed to my butter coffee. With some,
what?
Yeah, butter coffee. Yeah, you put butter in your coffee. especially if you.
Is that along with the Himalayan salt as well?
I mean, you could. Salt and coffee.
I didn't say you could. I'm asking you.
No, what I usually.
Are you still doing the Himalayan salt?
Oh yeah, we're doing
And butter.
and butter. We do like we have like the magic bullet. Put some coffee, butter, and pumpkin spice seasoning in there. That's pretty good.
That sounds good.
Yeah, the magic bullet makes it more like a frothy sort of like latte than Now when we go to Brothers and I just put like half a tablespoon of coffee and so it's like an oily coffee mess.
Yeah,
It's kind of gross, but I tried bringing that like little stir rod and it didn't work at all. So I'll just bring my magic bullet. I'll just bring a magic bullet.
There you
now.
go.
There.
He'll
Just
plug
leave it
it
in the
in.
kitchen.
I'm sure I'll plug it in for you.
Oh, speaking of which, I got some coffee to give you.
Yes, I looked at those bags over there, so
Yeah.
I have to steal one of those from you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not great coffee.
I
But
can
it's
only
coffee.
imagine. I can only imagine. No, we've actually been doing Aldi's has like a German roast coffee that's low acidity.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually really good, and it's also we kind of switched to this. Not going off too much of a tangent. To kind of help with my wife's hormones because apparently women, if they have coffee before they eat, like a straight any sort of coffee, it can really fuck with your hormones. So she has to eat. So we got that because first coffee was hurting her tummy because she would have it in the morning and then eat maybe like at 10 o'clock. And so we got the low acidity and it helps a lot.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah. I mean, what essentially I do, I drink like 3 or 4 cups of coffee and then about noon, I'm like, oh, I should probably eat sometime today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I crush a monster and then like 1 o'clock, I'm like, man, why am I irritable? Oh, it's because I haven't eaten anything all day.
I've had 700 milligrams of caffeine and no calories all today.
Okay. Well, in
That'll
all
do
fairness, it's 200 milligrams.
The Reigns are 300.
That's right, 310.
The other budget one I saw was Shock. I think that's what it was.
I don't know about that one. What I can tell you is that I've already brought it up to you, but for those of you listening, I had Bolts and Holes let me try some of his Gorilla Mind, and that was actually really good.
Gorilla Mind.
Yeah, I think you can get it at GNC. I'm going to pop in and see, but anyway, and it's not as caffeinated as Rain.
I love my Reigns. It's
I was seeing into the future. I was getting so much caffeine.
I have a very good friend of mine who was on some ADHD medications. Never had an energy drink in his life. And then one day he's like, we're in Colorado. He's like, fuck it, let's try a Celsius. That dude worked out for like 3.5 hours, and then we went back. So we get done with the gym, and he's just like sits down for a second, like I gotta go for a run, and he just like disappeared for hours. No idea where he went.
Let's go to Manitou. Let's climb Manitou.
He came back, and he was still wired, and then he got really, really sick. And then
I can imagine.
So that was like the first and only time I've ever seen that man ever have like any sort of energy drink.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So.
He went hard.
He went for like he was talking about it because he's like, my kids drink. He was a teacher at the time. He's like, my kids drink this all the time. He's like, there's one girl, she actually went to the hospital for this. So this is also medical advice. Don't do this. She just starts like having a heart attack in class, and they open up her backpack, and she had, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. She's had 5 Celsiuses. So, like,
really?
Yeah. And
man, I think that's what Nan's sister drinks. Does
Celsius?
it have that much caffeine in it?
It has a pretty good chunk of caffeine.
Really?
But also, being a 14-year-old kid drinking that much.
Well,
and that's hopefully we'll get some time to talk about this. But like food selection, don't let your kids drink.
Yeah.
Have access to that stuff, please. It's bad enough that I have adult money. I do adult bad decisions with my money, but don't let your kids do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, because I think she ended up living, but it's just still crazy. Like we talk. I remember when Red Bulls and Monsters were really prevalent, like when we were in high school and college, and everyone talked about God, I have a friend of mine had like 3 Monsters that died. You're like, I don't think that, but it's still not good. So,
Well, back in my day,
back in my day, we had
I can remember in the 90s when Jolt
Jolt, Surge
came out. Oh, yeah. Surge. Is it Surge or Jolt?
Jolt and Surge came up kind of at the same time.
Yeah.
But Surge was just it was just raw sugar. You're just drinking 100 grams of sugar, and
but there was so many people, parent groups coming out and saying, "Oh, these Jolt drinks, they're gonna kill our kids," and
I get it now. I absolutely get it now. I remember we used to drink Mountain Dew a lot, and everyone was like, "Yellow 5 makes pee small," and and there's a bunch of other things which can't confirm. I used to drink a lot of Mountain Dew, and pee is small, but I remember as a kid, you're like, "This is stupid. This is dumb," and now I'm an adult, and I'm no thanks to the Durbins, Josh.
You're welcome.
It's like we make our own sourdough because store-bought bread's bad. We make our own butter. Pink Himalayan salt on everything. We've done keto several times. We're big into intermittent fasting, and we're at that point where like just going through the grocery store, if you pick up something, you're checking the ingredient list and doing like what the fuck is in our food.
Yeah.
Like Costco has been a savior, I think, to us. Aldi as well. Aldi does a really good job with their food, but like going to Hy-Vee and just going to that center section, and then just looking at the garbage that are in our food these days is just.
We got, Nan's making her own food, or her own food. Of course, we make her own food.
Yeah.
She's making her own bread. And then, there's a group chat that I have with, Amber.
Yeah.
So the ex-wife. There's me, Nan, Coriana, and then Amber and her new husband were in a group chat. And all of a sudden, just a few days ago, Amber's just like, "Hey, Nan, how much money would you say that you spend to make one loaf of bread?" And just Nan's just like turned on, just like, "Oh, you want to talk about making bread?" So, the next thing you know, there's like walls of text, and so I was like, "You never really answer that question. How much do you think that you spend?" She's like, "I don't know, maybe." I can't remember what
it's
she
like
said.
$1.50.
Yeah, exactly.
For our sourdough loaves that we make, it's like outside of getting the starter going, it's like $1.50.
Yeah, I mean, Nan does the kind of premium flour.
Yeah.
So I think it's King's flour or something like that.
Oh, that's not the premium stuff, man.
Oh, it's not?
That's pretty high up there.
She buys it from Target, so
go to the farm when you start going to the farmer's market and buying fresh milled stuff.
Oh,
that's when it starts getting bougie.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, she's done an awesome job with the sourdough, and I don't even really want to eat
normal bread.
Normal bread, yeah. Now the amount of butter that I end up putting on these pieces of bread now is kind of counteracting, the good ingredients, maybe.
No, so this is a 4chan post I saw, and it's probably the best, like nutrition advice I've ever heard. It was like this post to talk about. He's like, I've tried all these different diets. I've tried everything. He's like, my body just loves steak, eggs, and butter. It's like maybe like it's one of those. He had this whole thing. It's like I would go out and have these massive meals and not feel full. I go home, have 2 eggs, and I'm full.
Yeah.
Like I feel satisfied. And his whole like philosophy was like our bodies are in a constant condition to crave butter, eggs, and steak because that's what we run off of. And if you don't get that, everything else is just empty calories until you get one of those 3 things.
Yeah.
Fat's the most underappreciated macronutrient.
Mm-hmm. We were just growing up. We were taught to fear fat.
Exactly.
Fat was bad. Carb was good.
Fat's bad. Freaking eggs are bad.
Yeah.
And now it's my diet consists of like 4 or 5 eggs with some Greek yogurt in the morning, and then if Katie doesn't get mad at me, I'll have a steak in the afternoon. And
why
you're
would
pretty
she
much
get
done.
mad at you? Why would she get mad at you?
Steak's expensive. and it seems silly to have a steak in the afternoon. I guess I don't.
What, before dinner?
There's a totalitarian authority that rules my life. that has it's 2 daughters and a wife, and
You're outnumbered.
I am way outnumbered. It's like, Jeff, you can't have a steak in the afternoon. I can't have like a nice 10-ounce New York strip steak. And as I'm sitting there eating it, it's like, yeah.
Well, that's
like asking me not to be a man anymore.
well, if you go out and harvest a deer, you can just have all the steaks you want.
Yeah, if I can ever find one, that's the hard thing.
Yeah, no.
Let me rephrase that. If I ever have time to go out and find
of course,
one,
yeah. That's the trick.
My second daughter had a really great job of being born halfway through, or like at the very beginning of Kansas rifle.
Yeah.
So.
Ground her later for that.
Yeah, I will. Or just take her hunting every Christmas for her birthday. I'm like, happy birthday! Go sit in this fucking deer blind with me. It's bonding.
Yeah, it's bonding time.
So,
yeah. But you can't talk.
You can't talk at all.
You can't talk at all.
You'll be silent this entire time, and don't freeze to death, or Mom will be super mad at me. And then you did some. So we'll probably have. I'm just looking at the timer right now. We got about 20 minutes left, and I was wanting to kind of get into the kind of the veteran advocacy stuff that you've been working on, and also the I can't remember the organization again. Where you guys took
the Warriors Keep.
Yeah, Warriors Keep. Talk to us a little about Warriors Keep. Is it still going on?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I haven't been as involved with it this year. I wanted to not travel as much, stay around the Manhattan area, and just focus on the community, focus on my family. But when I was doing it, it was all good. We went everywhere from Mount Wheeler, New Mexico, to Colorado. We did Mount Elbert,
Been to Elbert, yeah.
Yeah, and then Mount Whitney in California.
Yeah.
And I haven't been a part of these ones, but they've even done some abroad. They did Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa.
Wow,
that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But it was all expense paid trip, and just reconnecting with veterans out in the wilderness again. And what I thought was neat with each one of these trips is it was always a constant. Like the faces were always different, but the conversations were always the same.
Yeah,
it was like I could sit across from someone that I never served with, and all of a sudden be taken back to like a guard tower in Baghdad. Sitting there talking for 12 plus hours maybe about everything going on in your life. It's just, I think there's a reason that it's hard for veterans to come back, integrate themselves with society. It's just because you're never going to have that depth of a relationship with someone else outside of a marriage. So
yeah, that's a great way to put it. Because we're so connected to our wives, or our girlfriends or partners
sisters.
or whatever. But and you share all of those intimate details, and then to correlate that to your service time, that's I've never heard it correlated that way, and it's perfect.
Yeah,
it's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's obviously not something that intimacy, like that word getting thrown around in those types of relationships, but it is like it's intimate. Like you're with somebody, you're in a combat zone, or even if you didn't go to combat, you're in a stressful training environment. You have to go through something hard with somebody, and the other side of that is it's hard to understand when you're working in an environment and somebody's sitting there stressing out about some deadline, and you're just like, did somebody die? Are you dying? What's the problem?
Yeah,
everything's okay.
Yeah,
everything will turn out to be good in the end.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, I mean, seeing that with conversations in the Warriors Keep was always cool. And it was neat because it would be personality types too, right? So like, you think of like the people that you work with when you were in the military. And I don't have names for all the different personality types, but it was eerie how similar we all are.
Yeah.
But then also it's a little sad, to think about it today, because of how there are a lot of veterans, the Gulf War era veterans today that don't identify themselves as veterans. Like if you ask them if they're a veteran, they'll say no, which is weird to think about. And I have a thought that, I don't know this for sure, that maybe it's because they don't feel like they fit in.
Yeah.
And so they've found the only way for them to fit in is to completely, like throw away that part of them and lean all into what they reintegrated back into once they got out of the military.
Do you think with how, I'm trying to choose the word carefully, how probably like unpopular GWAT looking back at it now, do you think that we'll have that sort of same thing here, 20, 30, 40 years where you're going to ask, someone who served in GWAT, hey, are you a veteran? Like, no, I'm not. I went over there for some stupid reason, or, kind of use some sort of way to disassociate all the negative things that have, as things are, as the botched withdrawal that we had a couple years back, and, looking at, historically, what the fuck were we doing there?
Yeah.
Will you think there would be that sort of similar like disassociation? Like, I'm not a veteran. I didn't serve in a war. I served in something. I don't even know what to call it. Do you think there's going to be some sort of that, or do you think it's going to be no? We're going to stick to what we got, or like what we're going through right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's happening now.
Yeah.
I can only speak to the conversation. Well, it's like I talked about when I was volunteering with the Warriors Keep, right? You have all these different personality types. And so the infantry, they call it the tip of the spear, right? But the infantry is still big. There's a lot of units of infantrymen, right? But and even just like combat MOSs, or the military in general, you continue to have those conversations. So based off of that, you can kind of extrapolate things if you stay connected with the guys that you served with. And what I'm hearing from the guys that I served with is, they have either always been aware of it, in the moment, like while we're deployed, like, what are we doing here? Or they come to it shortly after while they're still serving, and maybe that's what caused a lot of them to, kind of get out. And then the op tempo of being in that long of a war.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're already there. That there probably is maybe a little bit of a shame piece to it. Not to say somebody is entirely ashamed of their service, but they know that they have a pretty good understanding that the reason that we were somewhere we weren't supposed to be, the reason we were in Iraq, the reason we were in Afghanistan, had nothing to do with, protecting the American dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you go to, if you think about like post World War I, World War II, like the veteran community is massive because you just had these global conflicts, but it was kind of a badge of honor, and also was a huge community that was and then you get into like the Vietnam era as well, where it was like this very tight knit community where it was they were very outspoken about everything. And then as you talked about with Gulf War, and I foresee GWAT's going to be the same thing. It's going to be a very withdrawn, closed door community because, things like Vietnam and World War I, or World War II at least. I don't know about World War I, but World War II, it was like we had to tell this great story, this great adventure of, at least World War II, us defeating the Nazis. This was a great and wondrous thing, and now we're looking at GWAT in hindsight, and it's like, ooh, probably shouldn't have been there. And
yeah. No, I mean that's the general. I can only speak to the conversations that I have.
Yeah.
I don't do like big studies on this, and with the conversations that I'm having with the guys that I've served with, it seems like there's a lot of confusion on to why we were there. And for the ones that aren't asking those questions, it was like you'd already mentioned.
Like
why did we leave in the way that we did?
Like I just foresee outside of the random people around here, their ERB or ORB on the back of their car with all their deployments. You won't here like 40, 50 years see guys with like GWAT hats going to like the Veterans Day parades and waving flags as much as you do see like the Vietnam and World War II. It's just going to be more of a quiet, like, yeah, I was there. I did X amount of tours, but at the end of the day, it was for what? Question mark.
Yeah. Well, I believe that people will still be proud of their service.
Yes.
And
yes.
because, and it'll be because of esprit de corps. It won't be because of what we did, right?
Right.
It'll be because of the person that you served with while you were there.
Yeah.
Because, like you're 17 to early 20-something years old, typically when you decide to enlist or you go and get your commission. Your brain doesn't fully develop.
21, 25-ish, isn't it? Like
It's older than that. It's like late 20s to early 30s, I think, depending on what you read.
Yeah.
So, one, you're asking somebody to make an adult decision that they don't really have the full capacity to make.
True.
Right? And I understand it, because like that's the mentality that you need to train somebody up, to teach them to do the things that they need to do so they can go down range and do their job. And so, like you build those bonds, and it's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But like my buddy who came through today, he's still trying to make sense of everything. He was on some small kill teams when we were in Baghdad. We were in the city. We took over Saddam Hussein's bodyguards. I guess this is where they used to work out their gym, and that turned into our combat outpost.
Yeah.
Wow.
And during that time, he was on some small kill teams that they would put out into the mahallas, the neighborhoods out there, just to try to observe, and then if there were any terrorist activity, report back on it. And just how that was managed, like he felt like he was left out there. He watched my buddy that I work with at the Warriors keep Mark Sanderson get shot in the arm, right? And for 3 years, he had nightmares about Mark saying, "Help me, Dorsey, I'm shot."
Yeah.
And so that everybody has a different level of trauma from their experience, right? And that level of trauma, I've seen it in him. It's kind of kept him from getting to the point, right? So we're all going to come to it in our own time, this realization of our service, whatever it is, right? My hope and what I see happening is that, you have a long war. So you need a long time to recover from it.
Yeah.
And we're getting to that point now where you're going to start seeing more veterans who were GWAT veterans, part of that Gulf War era, who are coming out of it, and they're going to start wanting to go back and understand.
Yeah.
And that them being proud of their service is going to come back. The opportunities for veterans to come together, connect, and, figure out how to be, we called them, when I started, we called them force multipliers. Be force multipliers in their community, right? Be able to contribute in a way that their civilian counterparts can't, just because they don't have the same experience.
If there's one thing to say about like the veteran community now, though, the amount of advocacy, not just like in a local community, but nationwide and through congressional, federal ways, and with the soda weaponization of social media.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot getting done. Like, you talk about the Hunter 7 Foundation. There's a bunch of foundations out here doing tremendous amount of work and using whatever means they can. I think that's something that is just unique to GWAT compared to, if you think about, any other conflict, the amount of advocacy groups are probably just, you maybe had the VA and VFW, and that's really about it. So it's just, I think that's what one of the things are going to make the veterans of GWAT going to have like a little bit easier time, but at least, have a little more support through all of it. So we are at just shy of 2 hours now. So I had a lot more I want to talk about, but I guess for this episode, we're going to start wrapping it up here.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So usually what we do at the end is we'll give you an opportunity to spiel some dad advice to everybody, like what's your best dad advice.
Or dad joke.
Dad joke if you want it as well.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do.
Or whatever. He'll give you about a minute if you want.
About a minute to give dad advice.
Whatever you wanted.
Okay.
Or a good dad joke.
I don't have good dad jokes. My kids can attest to that. But I think that is actually the point of a dad joke.
Yeah.
Good dad advice.
Essentially, if you had
Here,
one
let me go first, so you can kind of get an idea.
Well,
'Cause I have really great dad advice right now.
Okay.
So, hey, if you ever believe that you have poison oak, poison sumac, poison anything on your hands, don't touch your genitals, man. It is not fun.
Wow.
Yeah. So, if you're ever out in the woods chopping down whatever, cleaning up your yard, if there's even the slightest inclination that you might have touched that stuff, go wash your hands several times, soap and water,
Yeah.
chemical cleaner, whatever you could find, and then
That's a great lesson.
Great
That's
lesson.
Yeah.
I learned my lesson on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of your dad advice, but also if you feel like you've gotten into poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, go take a lukewarm or cold shower if you can handle it with Dawn dish soap immediately. Yeah, because the oil from the plant,
break
if you
down
can
those oils. Yeah,
wash it off, and
that's a great idea.
you'll have a less severe reaction.
Yeah.
There you go. You got some dad advice.
There you go.
There you
Thanks.
Right on.
Thanks.
There you go.
Thank you, Jeff, for
Right
the
on.
assist.
Hey, you know who I saw today?
Who did you see today?
Everyone I looked at. That's my dad joke for this
that's-
episode. I didn't have any dad advice, but
It's okay. That's fine. No, that's fair. That's fair. We walked into that one.
contribute. I gotta send a hat nod to Nan for that one because that was.
She hit you with that earlier
Oh,
today?
she hit me that yesterday. Yeah,
Okay.
I was like, oh, she got me on that one. So, but
I thought you were actually going to talk about somebody that we both know that haven't seen in a while or something like that. No,
no, I've been living a pretty boring life lately. So
it's working for me. Work, family, bus. Work, family, bus. Repeat.
Oh, yeah. Just
We
30
got a couple
seconds.
minutes.
30 seconds. Bus update. How
Bus
is that going?
update. I have a hole in my bus now that if I pee in my toilet, the pee will go in the hole outside of my bus. Now I have to connect that to something else. Electrical's 99% done. I've hung every wall I can right now. Cabinets are on the way. Hopefully we'll have it up and running by the summer.
That's great. For those of you who are hearing about this for the very first time, Hefe is converting an old
That's actually
school bus.
my dad advice. Don't ever fucking do this. If you think that it looks great on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you see I can do this, don't just go buy an RV. It's just go buy an RV, go buy a camper, go enjoy your life,
Not
go
from
enjoy
Camping
summer.
World.
Huh?
Not from Camping World.
Don't get it from Camping World.
Yeah.
Go spend money. Go enjoy your summers. Don't be me in 3 years of purgatory trying to convert a school bus into a tiny home.
Yeah. It's great.
Great dad advice.
Yeah. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start shutting this thing down. Really do appreciate. Thank you so much for coming out
Thank you.
and telling us your story. It's a very unique and interesting story, to say the least, and some of the trials and tribulations that you've kind of been able to work through and carry that along with you and help other people. That's really great. Do you have some social media stuff that people can follow you or anything like that they can?
Yeah, my
learn?
my Instagram, it's DiscoveringTheDurbins.
Okay.
My
Right
last
on.
name, DURBINS.
All right. Well, we'll include all of that information into the description of this podcast so people can jump in and possibly learn a little bit more of your story and stuff like that. And, you're welcome to come back anytime. We can just,
No, one and done. That was it.
no, yeah.
We're done with you.
no, not at all. Not at all.
No.
We would love to have you back anyway and talk a little bit more, maybe some of the other things that we didn't get to.
Yeah.
For sure, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that Hefe had kind of jotted down in his mind. So, but anyway, again, thank you so much for taking your time tonight to do this. With that being said, again, want to say a huge thank you to our title sponsor, XS Sites. Thank you so much for helping us out a little bit. We got our setup a little bit better, so we do appreciate their support. But with that being said, thank you guys so much, and we will catch you guys next time. As always, don't forget to live, laugh, and LARP. Bye, y'all.